Actor turned director Brady Corbet takes the audience on a journey into a contextual exploration of post-war brutalist architecture in a story that unfolds over the years following the Second World War, as gifted Hungarian Jewish architect Laszlo Toth navigates his way through a new life and new purpose while nursing the psychological and emotional wounds of the past years. But when his path crosses with a wealthy industrialist who celebrates and invests in Laszlo's talent, everything changes in ways no one could ever expect in the epic drama The Brutalist. Leading man Adrien Brody stepped into the role of Laszlo Toth in this film for several reasons. It was the kind of script he had always been looking for as a man with a great appreciation for architecture. Himself the son of an artist mother of Hungarian Jewish descent, the film also offered a special connection to his roots, and after his memorable Oscar win for another wartime drama, The Pianist, he was clearly not an actor to shy away from a role that would be emotionally demanding.
Judita DaSilva, Arise play Nigeria. Now, in times of war, we kind of see that when the enemy really wants to decimate a country, you burn their books, you burn their art, you bomb their buildings. And then you have your character in this film that is an architect who survives the war, and we find out so does his architecture. But ironically, the audience never actually gets to see the buildings and the manifestation of his talent. So for you as an actor, is it harder to shape a compelling leading man when the audience in the immediacy, first sees a fragile, somewhat broken soul instead of the instruments of his talent?
I think it's a good question. I think the beauty and nuance of Brady Corbet's storytelling is that it unfolds, and you learn a great deal about the complexity of life. And I think much of the film is about the lingering trauma of war, not war itself. That the war is now behind them, but what lives on is the traumatic experiences, the echoes of war, which do live on, and how this kind of the post-war architecture is deeply influenced by trauma from that war. And it also shows great fragility, as you had said, and flaws within this man who is really trying to cope.
Yeah.
And he's separated from his wife. He's afflicted with addiction and toils in poverty, and has lost all that he has built. And we do get a glimpse of it in that one moment. There is a glimpse where they show his imagery, and that's a very powerful moment for me, actually, because it's more important than the repayment that Van Buren, the other character in the scene, is offering him for the work in the past. The ability to retain those images, and the idea that those structures that he had made that would have most likely been bombed down remained, and the symbolic nature of that, and all that he's poured into these creations, that they still remain, I think is very touching. So yeah. I think, again, it's about all the complexities and nuances of life, and the struggle of an artist and an immigrant, and definitely the repercussions of war.
The Brutalist presents a chorus of characters that are complex and intriguing. Most of all, the character of Laszlo's wealthy benefactor, Harrison Lee Van Buren, an intimidating, formidable, but somewhat tragic character, hauntingly brought to life by Guy Pearce, a seasoned actor known for playing memorable, complicated characters in films like Curtis Hanson's LA Confidential and Christopher Nolan's Memento.
I'll start straight away. When I spoke to Adrien, he said that one of the main themes of this film was the lasting trauma of war. And when I watched it, what's immediately apparent is that you see that in brutalist architecture and the characters played by Adrien and Felicity. But I also noticed that your character and even your character's dysfunctional children are also forged out of a kind of trauma. Was that something that was presented to you from the beginning by Brady, or did that evolve as you developed the character?
Well, on many levels, I didn't develop the character. I feel like the characters came fully formed in the script. So I feel like I didn't have to do any work at all. They were just there, and I kind of did my best to kind of get on board what I recognized in this script. So it was a wonderful experience, because I didn't have to build anything. I didn't have to sort of put anything together or create anything. I feel like the recognition of the various foibles, the strengths and the weaknesses of this character in particular were quite clear on the page. And you know, even if you just look at my first two scenes, which I know characters can be moody, but we see Van Buren come into the film just exploding and kind of out of control, trying to maintain control, and presenting a sort of a beast, as it were. And then in the second scene, we get to see the sophistication and the sort of the recognition of artistry and beauty and sort of the fine qualities of life that he recognizes in Laszlo Toth. And so we should be immediately sort of unnerved by what Van Buren might offer up next, because we've already seen two very extreme kind of behaviors. And I think that any past trauma in Van Buren's life is something that he's doing his utmost to push away and to try and is very presentational. It's all about what he owns, what he can show, it's a fairly typical capitalist sort of ideology, I guess. But what's interesting in that is, as I say, this sort of this recognition that he has for beauty and for style and obviously for architecture, etc. So yeah, it was all pretty clear on the page, to be honest.
The leading cast is rounded out by actress Felicity Jones, star of Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, Inferno opposite Tom Hanks, and Oscar-nominated for her performance in The Theory of Everything. Her acting chops were certainly put to the test as the dramatically and strategically introduced character of Laszlo's wife, Erzsébet Toth, who contends with challenges beyond her control, but not beyond her willingness to confront them.
Now, in films that explore female trauma, they tend to center around male sexual violence or battery. But in this film, your character's trauma is explored through disability and marital upheaval and war. Was that deviation from the convention something interesting for you to explore as an actor?
Well, Erzsébet is, as you said, she's suffering from malnutrition. You realize that all the trauma that she has gone through has been expressed physically. And in many ways, she is emotionally very, very consistent through the second half of the film. She is totally aware of who Van Buren is. She thinks he's not someone that she likes very much, but through circumstance, she is having to be nice to him because she's in a position of, economic weakness in respect to him. but she knows that he is not a good person. And you see that she stays very consistent in that line. And then what you see physically is her, through the nutrition of being in that country, you feel her physical circumstances improving. But it's very much the film, what I liked about it is that, as you say, it is an exploration of trauma, but the trauma it's never overtly stated. It's never, you understand intimately the horrors of what these people have been through without them ever talking about it. You know it through the way that they look at each other, the way they express themselves physically. And what you connect with is how these are two people just trying to make it work. They're just they're trying to make it work, like most human beings, in the best way that they can, with whatever means they have.
And one thing, like we touched on in the press conference, is we don't see your character for the first half of the film, but she has this almost Phantom of the Opera presence over everything that's happening because Brady very cleverly used Aku's maître to give her that power of you hear her but don't see her, with a voiceover of her letters. So by the time she is introduced for you, did you feel an added pressure that such anticipation has been built in the audience's expectations? I've got to deliver now.
Yeah, definitely. Shooting that scene where she arrives from the train, I was like, the stakes couldn't be higher, Brady. I mean, no pressure, but I just, you don't want her to arrive and to be a bit of a disappointment. Then the audience go, well, what was that? Why has he been waiting for her? He seems horrible. So yeah, that was definitely shooting that scene was one of the most pressured scenes I think I've ever shot in my entire life, that arrival, because there was also the history, they're both carrying the history of their relationship and that they haven't seen each other for 8 years. And what is that meeting going to be like? And what I liked about the script is that it's difficult, it's awkward, it's not picture perfect, rosy, oh, we just slot back straight into it. Is that they are two, they're strong-minded individuals. They both have very healthy egos. And you're watching these two people actually trying to connect when they've been thinking about each other so much. They've probably made each other into angels. But the reality is that, that they are probably quite annoying in the first instance until they rediscover, how to live together again.
Well, bravo on your performance. And I'm telling you, I was rooting you on in that scene, but I'm not allowed to say anything because of spoilers, but bravo, brilliant performance.
Oh, thank you. Thanks very much.
And did you enjoy exploring like the kind of tragedy of obsession that is shown by both your character and Guy Pearce's? Because I thought that was a very interesting way of journeying into the mind of two men that approach obsession in very destructive ways. Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, I mean, enjoy is an interesting word, but I do take some enjoyment in. I often joke that I must be deeply masochistic because I choose a lot of roles that are quite harrowing and require a great deal of sacrifice or understanding of suffering. And as far as their kind of compulsion and obsessive nature, it's very interesting. It's very interesting to play with those aspects of human nature. I have my own degrees of as it pertains to my own work, I can relate to certain aspects of it as well. And I know Brady, our filmmaker, does too. And so we all have a lot of I guess there is joy and enjoyment in unearthing it and distilling it in other ways and characters. Yeah.
Despite the sacrifice, another brilliant performance. I have really respected your work for a very long time. So it's great to talk to you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Thank you.
The unpacking of trauma in The Brutalist is multifaceted and applied through a collaborative balance between the acting, writing, and direction that forms its own kind of synergy for the viewer to figure out and enjoy. It is no surprise that those creative efforts were rewarded when director Brady Corbet won the Silver Lion at the Venice Film Festival for his work behind the camera.
Something I wanted to ask is about just your technique as an actor, because you know, in life, sometimes you come across people that say all the right things, but they just make you feel uneasy. And you're so good at giving Van Buren that quality where he'll be generous, he'll be supportive, but you're just like, there's something off about this man. How do you execute a performance that manages to be singular, but then you can elicit two different emotional responses from the audience?
Well, firstly, thank you. That's the hope. I remember when we did LA Confidential and people used to say, I hated your character so much, but I was rooting for him so much as well. So it's great to be able to play somebody who's presenting one thing, but in all those tiny little cracks or in those tiny little private moments, we see that they're just holding it together. They're just managing to sort of that there is effort made to be confident. There is energy there to try and maintain control. There is an insecurity there that's holding together all the possessions that he has. And so I think there's a drive that comes from a darker, more unhinged place, or a troubled and damaged place, and that he is therefore presenting all this stuff to try and mask all of that. And it's just how you play, how successful he masks it or not, that our audience goes, I'm seeing more than, I'm not fooled here, Mr. Van Buren. You know, so you want the audience, I think, to go, I don't know I don't trust this guy. He's charming, but ugh, you know.
Yeah. But I love that you mentioned LA Confidential. It's one of my favorite films and has never left my top 5. So lovely speaking to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Great to talk to you as well. I appreciate it. Sorry it has to be so brief.